And good morning from Studio One of the Law and Crime Studios in New York City's Herald Square. This is Brian Ross in today for Jesse Weber. He'll be back tomorrow. Meanwhile, a lot going on today. So the first witness this morning is a fingerprint expert, Thomas Balboni. He's been given a quick examination by the prosecutor, who is Georgia Capelman, and now the defense lawyers are talking to him about a pawnbroker ticket, which apparently the defendant, Sigfredo Garcia, signed in October of 13, which is prior to the actual murder, which was July of 14. We're joined this morning by two excellent lawyers to talk about this case and whatever else might come up. From Florida, Miami, Florida, Melba Pearson is here. And of course, from Georgia, our own Judge Ashley Wilcott. Thank you both for being here. Let me start with you, Melba Pearson. You know this whole team that's going on. You're a Florida prosecutor, former Florida prosecutor.
I do. I have to say I'm very impressed with their performance so far. We all pretty much started out our legal careers together, so it's always nice to see people that you know succeeding and taking on tough, complex, and big cases, especially mania cases.
So here's a very technical witness, Melba. What's the point of the cross-examination then, really?
Well, basically, the cross-examination is to, number one, draw attention to the time gap in between the date of the crime, which is July of 2014, and the date that the pawn or the selling of whatever the piece of evidence was, which was prior to the offense in October of 2013. So I'm not sure if this is a mistake or if this is a deliberate, piece of evidence that is somehow critical to the case. But the fact that it was pawned before the crime could be something that could be used towards the defendant's benefit. But again, if the state introduced it, there must be some link that we'll learn about hopefully shortly.
Right, and Judge Ashley Wilcott, we're like the jury. We're not sure where it's going, but we're watching closely. Where do you think it's going?
Well, I do wonder that with the prior date. The other thing the defense brought out, Brian, is that they wanted to say where was the location. And so I haven't yet put all these pieces together. And I think this case, more than a lot, I had to draw a diagram. They have got to tie all these little pieces together, they being the state, if they're going to convince the jury beyond a reasonable doubt that these are the right defendants.
So we're getting a few more details here. It's the Prius we're looking for in the car, driven apparently by Sigfredo Garcia, who is on trial for murder here, facing the death penalty. Quite a case. So Judge Ashley Wilcott, as they try to determine whether Sigfredo Garcia urinated in the parking lot, it seems like they know something that the witness does not.
Absolutely. And I think the point of that is the defense is going to try to say, listen, here you want the state's trying to say this is a credible witness and has video of this, but yet this very obvious thing that the defendant, I'm assuming, would say he did in the parking lot was not captured, was not seen by this witness.
And Melba Pearson, he's a pretty good witness, not that he recalls, not that I know, not that I remember. No absolutes there that tie him down once and for all.
No, exactly, because he is not an expert. He is a regular civilian who happened to be the director of an establishment that had surveillance video, right? So he's the custodian. He's the one that has to say, this is how we keep the video. This is how often we erase video. When the police came to me, I just turned over the video as is. But the defense is clearly trying to cast some dispersions on the video by saying either, number one, it was tampered with because a major event is not present and that the director didn't notice it, or it may be a way of impeaching the credibility of some other witness who may have said that they saw the defendant urinating at this location. It could have been a police officer, it could have been a civilian. So this is definitely a way to try to discredit some of the state's evidence. We'll see how it pans out.
And there's Mr. Garcia in the blue shirt. Day 3 of this trial that's expected to last anywhere between 3 to 6 weeks. And we're back. This is Brian Ross, by the way, in for Jesse Weber. He'll be back here tomorrow. We're continuing our live coverage from Tallahassee, Florida, from the Leon County Courthouse there. This is the owner or the manager of a gym where surveillance cameras apparently caught the suspect driving a Prius. And the question back and forth is whether or not the cameras saw everything that might have happened there. Let me ask you this, Melba Pearson, the jury and the judge seem to be able to ask questions.
Yeah, that is not a normal practice. I did have a judge when I was early in my felony prosecution career adopt that practice. And it's a little nerve-wracking because sometimes the questions that the jury asks will maybe contradict the point that you're trying to get across, or just really cast dispersions on where your case is going. So sometimes you have to go back and readjust your strategy accordingly, and sometimes there's just an off-the-wall question that you're just like, okay, I have no clue what I'm supposed to do with this. But it is an interesting practice because it does allow the jury to get more information in a timely manner, and it can help them formulate an opinion that'll then turn into a verdict later on. But of course, they can also ask questions during the deliberation process. So there are other opportunities there, but usually when those questions are asked during deliberation, the judge basically says, either we're going to read back the record or rely on your own recollection. So this is a different way to kind of get real-time information to help the jury. But it's still nerve-wracking for the parties.
And quickly, Judge Ashley Wilcott, I've been on juries, and I wish I could have asked some questions because I felt the lawyers weren't asking all the questions I wanted answered.
Absolutely, Brian. It's just kind of wild how this is allowed. Not in all states. It should be noted it's not allowed in all states, but some would argue it allows them to present evidence by asking the questions, which feels a little unusual.
Let's go back to the live coverage of the trial. So a Tallahassee police officer describing what was going on the morning of the shooting. Shortly thereafter, he saw this van we're looking at here, or a van like that, with a female driver he could not identify, approached the scene, and because of the police tape and the shutoff, then made a three-point turn and left. Judge Ashley Wilcott, we could assume they're driving a point here that perhaps Catherine McBonwell was in that car.
Yes, I think that's the point. But interesting to note that this witness could not describe the female driving the car, nor could he identify the tag number. So this case, more than almost any that I've watched, and I love trial watching, Brian, has so many tiny little pieces of evidence that they are going to have to put together.
And Melba Pearson, how does the jury keep straight all this information, tidbit by tidbit here, as they build a mosaic, I guess?
Yeah, it's definitely tough. I've seen in other cases where jurors were provided notepads to be able to kind of take notes and keep track of all that's going on. And of course, they have the opportunity to ask for certain portions of the transcript to be read back while they're deliberating. But yes, I mean, we have to see if this van is going to be somehow linked to the co-defendant. Either there's rental records, something that's a car she owns, there's been known to drive, but this particular officer cannot identify the driver of the car, just that the car was in the area. And I also found it interesting how the car just moved kind of more deliberately than others. Can an argument be made that the person didn't want to get involved and just left, or that they were checking out their handiwork? I mean, we'll see.
Certainly, if we had you on cross-examination, this is not going to stand up as definitive. Anyway, we're going to continue our live coverage after a break from the Leon County Courthouse, the murder trial of Sigfrido Garcia and Catherine McBonwell. Stay with us. You're watching the Law and Crime Trial Network.